Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to AuthorStory. I'm your host, Alex Lim, and this AuthorStory is the home of authors and stories that matter. This episode's featured guest is Dr. Mark Schillinger, who will be talking about his cause and his organization, Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. So, Mark, welcome to AuthorStory. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So first off, with your background, I mean, you got into sports and you also got into involved with alternative healing and yoga. How did you get into this?
Well, I grew up in Queens in New York City in the 50s and 60s
Mm-hmm.
in an apartment building where everybody could hear everybody else, talk or yell or do whatever they do.
Right.
Plus, in my family alone, there was a history of depression and even suicide.
Mm.
So, as a teenager, I was very clear that I was going to have to learn how to manage my stress,
Mm-hmm.
and I was very precocious in sports and music and really spirituality, alternative things. And
Mm-hmm.
so one day I happened upon a yoga center in Manhattan. I think I was 17 or 18,
Mm-hmm.
and I really got turned on to spiritual philosophy
Mm-hmm.
and personal growth from there. And that really led towards my career in chiropractic, specializing in wellness, and then my work with families later on.
Right. And I also like to point out that you're not just into, you didn't just study Eastern philosophy and, psychology. You also
Yep.
like attended workshops in quantum physics,
Oh yeah.
spiritual development and stuff like that. So, I can kind of understand the spiritual development thing, but, why quantum physics?
Because quantum physics is spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much information going out now that really shows that spirituality and quantum physics are basically describing the same reality. They
Mm-hmm.
may have different concepts about how that reality got there,
Mm-hmm.
but quantum physics and spirituality really united in the way that they perceive reality itself.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the interpretations may be different, but they're eye-opening. Like even if you don't believe in anything spiritual, if you just understand the nature of this realm
Mm-hmm.
of the world, universe, it's pretty awesome is the term I like to use. It's pretty heart-opening, mind-opening, that's for sure. Was for me, and it has been for many thousands of my patients because I work as a life coach as well. And I
Mm-hmm.
like to help people discover their own relationship to whatever they think this universe or reality is.
Right, right, okay. So you're as you mentioned before, you're a practicing chiropractor, and I get how your interest in nutrition, personal growth, and spiritual development might lead you there, but how exactly did you become a chiropractor? I mean, in addition to this, you're also a life coach.
Oh yeah. Well, I moved from New York to California back in the early 70s. I was working in a hippie bakery and
Mm-hmm.
I hurt my back and I went to a chiropractor and I thought it was amazing.
Hmm.
So I just decided a couple years later to go to chiropractic school, which has really been a springboard actually for my work with families because I got to learn how the nervous system works because that's really what chiropractors specialize in. And then once I was having a hard time raising my son and I wanted to do a better job, I started to look towards brain science and understanding how young men's brains develop. And being a chiropractor,
Hmm.
I had a real background in that.
That's interesting because I mean, a lot of people they think a chiropractor, they think like massage and stretching and pulling and
Yep.
pressing and all that stuff. That you know, uh, the thought of being curious about brain development stuff like that, that is not really, I don't know, in the common language or the common context when one thinks of a chiropractor.
That's true. However, everything in your body, literally every cell, needs to be hooked up to a nerve, a electrical wire. And
Okay.
so chiropractors really specialize in treating the nervous system. And because the nervous system is protected by the skull and the bones of the spine, manipulating the spine, relaxing the muscles, stretching all those things you mentioned, they all help get the pressure off of the nerves. Because once muscles get tight, they move bones out of place. It can inflame nerves or the spinal cord,
Mm.
then the organs, the muscles, the skin, and the bones may not function properly.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I learned more about the nervous system, that's when I really made the decision to formally get into stress management.
Mm-hmm.
Prior I had been getting into meditation, yoga, things like that. But then once I was in chiropractic school, I realized that I wanted to focus on the neurology of stress management.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I got really good at it, so much so to the point now where I'm approved by the State Board of Chiropractic Examiners in California to teach my work
Mm-hmm.
to other doctors and acupuncturists so they can teach their patients to relax their minds in 15 seconds or less. That's kind of my claim to fame in the stress management world is I
Wow.
use mindfulness-based stress management techniques to teach people, including parents and children, how to relax very quickly.
Right, right. And I mean, with all the stress that's going on nowadays, I mean, even without the present concern about, COVID-19, I mean, life is already stressful enough as it is.
Truly. And what I would say is that if people don't have a way, if they don't have a way to get through life, like everything I learned from my early teachers is that you have to have rituals every day that are good for your body, for your
Mm-hmm.
mind, for your spirit. We're primates. We love to connect. You have to have people every day to connect with. And
Mm-hmm.
so when times of stress like this, which by the way, with COVID, this is a natural occurrence for literally hundreds of thousands of years, mankind has been open to the possibility of having these kinds of pandemics. And so humans are really innately wired to know how to deal with this,
Mm-hmm.
certainly by relaxation first, knowing how to relax so all the stress is critical. So we can actually get through this well, but we live in a culture that I don't think supports people relaxing and cooperating. So everybody's sort of on their own to figure out what to do. And there are ways to cope and relax to this. We just don't know how.
Right, right. Okay, okay. And of course, this is where people like you come in. I mean, help people manage their stress, maybe even
Yep.
help them find ways to work with what's going on.
Well, absolutely. So as a life coach and stress management expert in my practice, I teach people how to relax their minds very quickly. As I said, that's the very first step is knowing how to relax no matter what, no matter what, no matter what's going on around you.
Okay.
And, and then I help people discover their own virtues, their own values, like who are they really? And then how do you create a lifestyle where even if you have to work a lot and raise children, there's ways to be you. There's ways to evolve your own personality so that you can really live a fulfilling and meaningful life. And that's what I do best. And when I help people really get on their own unique path that's really true for them,
Mm-hmm.
then people are way better handled, better equipped to handle stress because they're already happy. They already have good routines so they can withstand all the stresses like the pandemic.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well. Okay. Got that. And yeah, definitely that'll help out quite a few people. Okay. So even as you worked your practice, you became a board member of the Performing Stars of Marin. What was this organization all about?
Well, the Performing Stars of Marin was the very first nonprofit that I got involved with.
Right.
It's not a nonprofit that I founded, but I was
Mm-hmm.
very friendly with the person who started that. And this is all about helping youth. And this is what got me to start my own nonprofit about 15 years later.
Right.
And so the Performing Stars of Marin helps children develop their artistic and creative skills. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the most important thing that we can do for children is help them discover their own talents first, and then they're way more likely to conform to the demands of the culture. So that was my first foray into nonprofit Performing Stars of Marin.
Right. And the Performing Stars, I mean, the kids who are involved here, were these like regular kids or were these like troubled kids? What sort of kids were
Uh,
involved in this program?
that particular nonprofit was mostly for challenged youth or underserved youth. That's not what I do with my nonprofit, but
Mm-hmm.
yes, that's what that nonprofit focused on, still focuses on, and still is doing a great job helping underprivileged youth. Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. And so let's move on to the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, which you founded in 2000, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So everything springs from a need, and I'm sure
True.
this is no exception. So what need does the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend fill?
All right, I'm going to say something very bold and daring. I think it fulfills maybe the most important need for humanity, and that's called rite of passage. I think
Mm-hmm.
that rite of passage for young women and for young men, and even adults, I put on rite of passage events for adults. I think rite of passage for young men is critically important because, especially in this era, they're growing up with so many comforts with digital devices and
Right.
so many distractions in the form of over the top entertainment and consumerism and media that they're actually losing touch with their drive, their natural, innate, healthy drive to leave the house and go strike out on their own and be their own man. The
Mm-hmm.
rite of passage event, which we don't have in our culture anymore, really helps parents prepare their children for the challenges of the young adult world because by the age of 12, 13, 14, most teens, that means young men and young women, they're kind of tuning out their parents. They know
Mm-hmm.
the message their parents have, so they need to get into a bigger community that says your parents were actually right. They know what they're talking about. Here's the values that you're going to need to learn to be responsible in your community, be a productive and safe member for your community. And of course, at the same time, a rite of passage helps young people discover who they are, their own unique talents and skills, so that they don't feel like all they're doing is living their whole life conforming to a world that demands all these rules on them. So it helps them
Mm-hmm.
discover who they are, how to bring their talents into the world, and ultimately to accept that the world is not all about them anymore. And finally, I would say a rite of passage also, at least in our Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, we give young men an opportunity to literally look up at the sky and get into a sense of wonder and awe, and helps them understand that they're not the center of the universe.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So before we move on, I'd just like to delve a little bit into the topic of rite of passage. I mean, there are lots of cultures have several rites of passages, and as you've remarked, the modern culture does not have this. So, can you give some sort of example of what a rite of passage, like say in another culture, is like, and what it aims to do?
Well, I can't really speak for what other rite of passages do in other cultures. I've studied them.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Mm-hmm.
never been allowed into them because
All
I'm
right.
not part of.
Okay.
So I honestly can't tell you what other ones do. I can tell you this: for a very brief period of time, I got a chance to spend time with a number of young men from a small Samburu tribe in Kenya,
Mm-hmm.
and I got a chance to spend some time with them and also the shaman of the tribe. And while they refused to tell me one word about their rite of passage, I can tell you the result. The
Mm-hmm.
result was a community, a tribe filled with young men who were proud to be the protectors of their tribe. They were
Mm-hmm.
proud to know that it was up to them to keep everybody safe and secure, and
Mm-hmm.
they were proud to offer their skills and talents for the well-being of the community. That much I do know, and that's what I see the general purpose of a report of findings is. I mean, a report of a rite of passage. Excuse me, a rite of passage is to allow parents to release their children into the community,
Mm-hmm.
so that the community takes care of them and the community reminds them of what their responsibilities are to themselves, their own well-being, and to the community. And once that's established in any culture, the communities are going to be a lot more cooperative and a lot more calmer and usually a lot safer. And because we don't have that in our culture, I think that most young men feel like they're on their own, that there's nobody really there to oversee them. And
Mm-hmm.
with all the dangers of all the digital devices, they kind of make up a lot of wacky stuff about what they think their role in the world is. And I'm saying that respectfully. These are good young men.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have the proper leadership.
Right, and I mean leadership. How to put this? Giving them an objective, giving these young men essentially a place in society. I mean, this is another thing that rite of passage does give, right?
That's exactly right. So when young men feel like they're honored in their community and they have a place and they feel respected, if we give respect to young men first, then they, as you said, Alex, then they feel like they have respect for themselves. And when young men have respect for themselves versus having anger and frustration and a sense of hatred, basically, towards the elders in their community, then they're going to act it out. And they're going to usually act it
Mm-hmm.
out very aggressively, either with violence or being disrespectful and rude in their family, or
Mm-hmm.
they're going to act it out by really passively withdrawing and just saying, F you, I have no desire to contribute, just want to smoke weed, play video
Mm-hmm.
games, and I'm not coming out of my bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, you're right. They need a sense of self respect. And that's what the rite of passage gives them. So they can go back to their homes, back to their community, feeling valued, and then they're more likely to share their talents and their gifts with their family and community.
Right. Okay. Okay. Got that. And from what's coming out here, it seems that a rite of passage seems to be, I don't know, a necessity, I guess, for societies,
Absolutely.
for young men, for when they enter society proper.
Absolutely, it is a necessity. And I'll tell you something else. I mentioned very earlier a little bit. I now do rite of passage events for parents because I think in this
Mm-hmm.
culture they're also working so hard. They don't have enough time to really bond with their children, and they're so stressed out, and they're so under so much stress to produce a productive child that they need to learn how to let go of their son as a boy, how to
Mm-hmm.
receive him into their family as an intelligent young man, how to treat him with more respect, and I teach parents how to do that so that they'll get a son who's going to be way more likely to cooperate with them.
Right, and I mean this works both ways. And I mean, the parents understand their boy better and give their boy the respect some respect, and the kid does the same to the parents. I mean, it seems to work both. Yeah, it goes cuts both ways.
It cuts both ways if the parents have the skill to know how
Mm-hmm.
to earn the respect of their son,
All right.
and they have to know how to communicate to him in a specific way, how to celebrate with him in a specific way. We use consequences in our rite of passage in our work with parents, but they're not punishments. They're designed to help young men learn how to adapt to the challenges of the young adult world, and they appreciate that. They don't
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to be sugar coated too. They want to know what's up. You just have to know how to tell them. And the old-fashioned way of yelling and screaming and demanding and threatening and punishing,
Right.
it doesn't. It just does not work anymore.
Right. Right. Is this because of the changing culture? I mean, like the culture is like different decades ago compared to today. That stuff like as you mentioned, yelling and stuff like that does not work anymore.
Yeah, because these young men, when my father told me to go to my room if I did something, wrong in the
Mm-hmm.
late 50s or early 60s when I was turning into a teen, there was no device in there. There was no TV, there was no radio, there was nothing. So if I had to go to my room, it was because I had to simmer in contemplating whatever I did wrong that I could have done better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when young kids go to their room, they're happy, they're thrilled, they can lock their own door, and they have all the devices and all the things that they need.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a different culture because of I would say, the demands of attention that devices have, where young men feel obligated to constantly participate and get that instant gratification with those devices. They're losing touch with their prime directive, which is to be intelligent enough to make it in the outside world. And we don't live in that culture anymore. We live in a culture now that really demands that they pay attention to what I would say are mostly unimportant things.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. Yeah. Because I'm glad you brought that up. Because I was gonna ask that next. I mean, the impact of culture and young men nowadays, and how this affects their development, how this affects the way they see their place in society.
Absolutely. When you respect a young man, when you can teach a young man how to discover who he is and how to bring his talents and gifts into the world and how to be at peace with himself, then he's way more likely to want to contribute to his family and his community. So, what I've learned is that when parents send their sons to the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend, some of them have this attitude like, oh, please fix my son, or please save him, or please,
Mm.
wake him up, and they like drop them off like he's a 5-year-old at a camp.
Right.
And it's nothing like that. And I'm not blaming the parents because I started the Young Men's Weekend because I was having a hard time raising my own son. So I
Okay.
understand frustration. But we all need to learn as a culture that young men can be our saviors, just like young women can be our saviors. They have the skills and the tools and the desire and the drive to make this world a better place. We're just not we don't know how to do it anymore. The old
Mm-hmm.
ways of trying to work with young people are not working. So I teach parents how, and health educators and therapists and coaches and mentors, how to get through to young people now so that they can become valued members of society, first by learning to teach them how to respect themselves.
Right. Right. Okay. And now now for parents, I mean, to get a real to get the full effect of this, I mean, they really should join your workshop. I think it's called Raising Your Son to Be Happy, Responsible, and Resilient. This is correct?
That is correct,
Yeah, okay.
absolutely.
And for granted, they really to get the full effect, they should join the workshop. But can you give one example of something that they can learn that would help them raise their young man?
Yeah, I can give a quick story that might help.
All right.
Because I specialize in stress management, the first thing I do is I teach the parents how to relax, literally how to relax in the moment, um, so that when their sons are acting out or acting immaturely or disrespectful, they don't respond in a reactive way. So
Mm-hmm.
here's an example. So at the workshop, or I also privately coach parents. So when I teach them this skill and they get good at it, that's the basis of the relationship with their son moving towards the better. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, I was coaching some parents a few months ago, and I taught them this relaxation technique skill that takes 15 seconds or less to do. Their son came into the kitchen where they were cooking dinner. He was very demonstrative. He was yelling. He literally punched a hole in the kitchen door. He
Mm-hmm.
was so angry. And he was prone to that. I mentor the young man, so I know him. He's a great kid who just doesn't know how to control his emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So he stormed into the kitchen, and I taught the parents that when their son comes into the room like that, that they should hold hands. They need to feel and look united. They practiced the technique that I taught them. They just stayed calm. They never said a word while he was yelling and screaming.
Mm-hmm.
After about 30 seconds, the way the mom related the story to me, after about 30 seconds of them just being quiet, he sat down and he started to sob. He literally started to cry.
Mm-hmm.
And the dad was telling me the rest of the story. The dad was saying that after he stopped crying, he totally apologized to his parents for being so demonstrative, and then proceeded to tell them the truth, that he was having a hard time in school with some of his friends,
Mm-hmm.
and that after that incident, he rarely got loud with them. He rarely got demonstrative, because they all realized that learning to relax is the key skill that they all have to cooperate. So
Mm.
that one little technique helped the family move in the right direction.
Wow. Okay. And of course, there are lots of other techniques I'm sure that parents can
Oh,
learn from this.
oh, absolutely. There's communication techniques. There's teaching parents how to consequence young men, so it's a positive experience that helps them learn how to make it in the world. There's teachings on how to celebrate life with your child. There's all sorts of things that we do. Like I said, it's a rite of passage. It's a full
Mm.
weekend event. But I also teach these techniques when I do private coaching for parents as well.
All right. Okay. Okay. So back to the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. I mean, this is a rite of passage, and as you mentioned, this is not like a camp to straighten out your kid. There's something wrong with my kid. Can you straighten him out? That sort of thing. That's probably the main thought of some parents who leave their kids in your program. So, what are some of the activities that the kids are involved in here?
Beautiful. There's a number of them. One of the things that they love to do, my son Gabe is the reason why I started YMEW, to get a better relationship with him. He is now very, very successful in the hip hop world.
Mm-hmm.
He sells his beats online. He works with world famous producers. So he actually brings a makeshift hip hop recording studio. These young men get a chance to make beats and make up lyrics. They love it. They do yoga. They learn to meditate. They do ropes courses. They're physically challenged, very, very hardcore. I would say the highlight of the event is on Saturday night. After they've been with us for 24 hours, they go through a very painful, powerful, physically, emotional, draining event. We
Mm-hmm.
call it letting go of the boy.
Mm-hmm.
And in this ceremony, all the men and all the young men participate in this very intense kind of gestalt event where they release all their past pain,
Mm-hmm.
hurts, disappointment, and anger with
Mm-hmm.
everybody in their life, whether it was their boyfriends, girlfriends, parents, teachers, whoever. It's very intense, and it takes about 3 hours. It happens in the middle of the night, and
Mm-hmm.
when they are done, they look happy, they look relaxed, they
Mm-hmm.
get the concept that now that they've released all their past pain, they are now responsible for their own well-being. That being a man means that you got to own your own stuff. You
Mm-hmm.
can't be blaming your parents for all your own unhappiness. So that event really begins the signal of their entry into young adulthood. And then a few hours later, in the early morning, they are engaged in a sweat lodge led by some of our Native American friends, and they learn how to relax. They learn how to use their intuition. They learn
Mm-hmm.
how to practice being in touch with something that may be bigger than them, which is quantum physics or reality or spirituality. In our work, we don't teach young men how to pray or who to pray to or how they do it, but we
Mm-hmm.
want to give them an opportunity to learn that when they can calm their mind, then they're more likely to be open to hearing their own intuition, or getting support from ancestors. So they have these two events back to back, grieving and then basically praying. And
Mm-hmm.
then after those two events, they're really like different people. They're cooperating for the rest of the weekend on Sunday, and they participate in other events too, like drumming circles and things like that. And then by the time they're ready to meet their parents on Sunday afternoon, they are literally, many of them have gone through a total transformational change. And then when the parents see their sons after being in a weekend uh, rite of passage with me, to watch them reunite and the way they hug and the way they speak to each other is really tear jerking. So basically, we're turning the parents and the young men inside out in a certain way. They're
Mm-hmm.
letting go of their past, and they're moving forward with a very specific way or method, because that's how our ancestors did it. They raised
Mm-hmm.
their children using very specific ways and methods that were founded on shared values. So we help parents and young men use the same shared values, And we've been doing this for 20 years, so we've had so many success stories over the years.
Right, right. Success. Yeah, and that's also another thing I want to ask about. I mean, because in the end, I mean, the proof of the pudding is in the crust, so to speak. How successful would you say your program has been? Like, say if 100 people came in, how many of them would you say would be success stories?
For young men at the
Yes.
weekend, okay, I would say it's not any different than any adults going to a personal growth workshop,
Mm.
where I would say out of 100 people, 100 young men, I would say a quarter of them, 25 of them, would literally come out of the weekend and shake our hands and thank us and give us a hug, and they look like a young man. They don't look like a boy.
All right.
I would say I would say 25% of the young men come to the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend and they don't really get it. They
Mm-hmm.
don't really understand it. They're a little overwhelmed. And yet we know that we've planted a seed with them,
Mm-hmm.
that they know that they have to change their lives.
All right.
And then and many of those young men will come up to me 5 and 10 years later and say, "Thank you for being at that event because I finally woke up to the fact that I'm responsible for my own well-being."
Right.
And then I say about 50% of the men are some combination of those two extremes. Some
Mm.
combination, they didn't get it and they totally got it. Some young men walk away with some things that they totally realize that they had to do better in, and some things that they didn't quite get. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
whole range, but um, we know that we're doing our job. We're fulfilling our obligation as adult men to
Mm-hmm.
initiate the young men. And we know that even if they didn't get it, they will get it someday because they got exposed to something that they could never get. Let's say sitting in a therapist's office
Right.
or going on a walk with their parents.
Right, right. Okay, okay. So this is yeah, I mean this is bringing back the basis, I mean, of like as you mentioned, it's really like bringing these young men into the adult world, into society, and in a place, in a position where they feel they are empowered and they can do something.
That's right. And the empowered is not in the negative sense, because I know we live in a culture right now that's very fearful of men and all the bad things they can do. And there's certain good cause for that, by the way. So I just want to be clear with the listeners that empowered doesn't mean in the negative sense that they want to dominate and be greedy and have control over people. It means that they know who they are in a very
Mm.
deep way. They know their virtues, they know their values, they know how to be true to themselves. And from that place, they're empowered then to go help their family and their community because they're already working on being at peace with themselves. So they
Mm.
naturally, primates, humans definitely naturally want to contribute. We want to connect. We want to bond. And I don't think young people want to do that unless they feel like they're being respected and taught how to be happy, healthy, and holy first.
Right, right. Okay, great, great, fantastic. Okay, great. Okay, so Mark, this is good grief. This is a topic that I think I can ask questions about you forever. But in the last minute or so of this interview, are there any words of wisdom you'd like to share, maybe to inspire listeners?
Yeah, I really would. I'd like to inspire all the listeners to know that when you see a young man, even if he's wearing a hoodie and he looks like he's not going to be friendly, whatever, I mean, unless you know you're walking in some dangerous neighborhood, if you're in a safe neighborhood, or if you're in any place, basically, please start to consider that these young men are our future. They
Mm-hmm.
are the future, the positive future. Look at them in the eye, give them a smile, nod your head, um, or just say hello. They need to feel that they have value. They need to feel like they need to be seen. So go out of your way to be friendly towards a young man. Go out of your way to offer wisdom if you have any, and most importantly, go out of your way to listen to what they have to say. Even if you disagree with them, let them get out what they're trying to articulate as young people, and then don't interrupt them. And then once they're done, if you have something to say, just begin with, here's what's true for me.
Mm-hmm.
I hear what you're saying. I respect what you're saying. Here's what's true for me. Then you can give your wisdom and then thank them for listening. And don't try to win any battle about who's smarter or who's righter. Just treat them as equals, share your wisdom, listen to theirs. That's the first sense that young men they'll feel valued in the culture. And I promise you, then they'll do a good job being our heroes and take good care of things.
All right. Okay. Well, great words right there. Okay, then. So, yeah, in closing, our guest is Dr. Mark Schillinger, and his cause is the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. So, Mark, thank you very much for being on Author Story. This is a fascinating subject. It is really great being able to talk to you and, to hear about your cause.
Yes, and if people want to contact me, they can do so at info@ymuw.org to learn more about the Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. If they want to know more about the parenting rite of passage or my coaching work for parents, they can contact me at info@challengingteenagesons.com. Info@challengingteenagesons.com.
ChallengingTeenageSons.com. All right. Okay, got that. Okay. All right. So everyone, check out Young Men's Ultimate Weekend. Get in touch with Dr. Schillinger at these places. I mean, I'm gonna post this on the blog, and particularly if you know anyone, friend, family who might benefit from it. And of course, go right ahead and hit that subscribe button to get a gander on all the people and stories we'll cover in the future. So, catch you guys all next time on Author Story, the home of authors and people with stories that matter.